Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rankus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you, everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
We'll bring you the expert interviews, insightful discussions, and practical tips to make motherhood a little easier and help your family thrive.
Please keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace the advice, diagnosis, or treatment plans you have with your personal healthcare team. Please have a conversation with your trusted healthcare provider prior to making any changes or implementing any strategies or advice you learn from this podcast.
Whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Here at the Motherhood Alliance podcast, we challenge the status quo, ask the tough questions, and offer a supportive community for moms who want to make an informed, holistic choice.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 3-episode series with Dr. Kate Williams, the owner of Well Within Chiropractic, right here in Appleton, Wisconsin. She is a family wellness chiropractor who has extensive training through the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association. She is Webster certified, she's a certified digestive health professional, and she offers cranial sacral therapy and nutritional counseling in her office. While she works with people of all ages, she has a special heart for kids, babies, and pregnant and postpartum mamas. When she's not caring for families, you'll usually find her reading, hiking, kayaking, or hanging outside with her 2 kids and husband. We are so excited for you to hear from her today. She brings such a grounded, refreshing perspective to health and healing, and these episodes are amazing. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are in episode 3 with Dr. Kate. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
We've had 2 awesome episodes already. If you have not listened to those, I highly recommend you head back and listen to those. In our first one, it was seriously relatable to everybody because we dived into what our physical symptoms or like our emotions are really telling us about what's going on in our body. And then in our second episode with Dr. Kate, we talked about some morning and evening routines that are super simple. And I know you guys have probably like read blog posts or listened to podcasts about making your morning easier. And that person is like, well, all you have to do is get up 2 hours before your children and do red light therapy and do your workout and stretch for 20 minutes. And it's like not practical, but what Kate shared is actually practical. Yeah. So make sure you go back and listen to those. But in this conversation, we're going to be talking about postpartum mental health. This is a hard season. Yeah. Postpartum is a hard season. So just to kind of kickstart this conversation, like what is the difference between postpartum mental health and why is it so much harder mental health wise than everyday mental health? Is it like physical, hormone related? Is it more situational because you're getting less sleep and you have more stress? Or is it like, just give us an overview.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that there's so much to it. I don't think it's just one thing. I mean, you have certainly your hormones are fluctuating. And I think we can see that in any time. I mean, I have, kids that are 11 and 13, they're getting introduced to hormones for the first time. Like anytime we have a major hormone shift, like you're going to have the highs and lows. That's just definitely part of it. But I think especially when we're talking about motherhood, like this transformation I've seen through so many people over the years of like, you're this person and you know who you are. And all of a sudden you have a baby and you're like, everything gets flipped. Like your whole life, maybe you've had a career and you were like, I'm going to be all about my career. And then you have a baby and you're like, I just want to stay home and snuggle my baby. Like there's so many aspects of it that completely change. And then your body's changing. So, I mean, it's all of it. I think you kind of almost lose your identity and you have these hormone fluctuations and you don't recognize your body. All of these things are happening all at once.
It's a lot on the mental. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're sleep deprived and somebody is caring for you for their every little basic need. So it's just a really, really challenging time.
So starting out with your expertise specifically, how can chiropractic help in the postpartum season?
Yeah. So in general, I just wanted to kind of get into how we know that chiropractic impacts the brain. I think a lot of times people think about chiropractic either from a musculoskeletal point or certainly maybe from a nervous system standpoint. But over the last 20 years, there's been some really interesting research where they're looking into like, okay, what actually happens when you get a chiropractic adjustment? And one of the things that has come out that's just been so incredible is seeing how chiropractic impacts the brain. And they're finding increased activity in an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like right under your forehead, if you will. So kind of in the front part of your brain. The prefrontal cortex is really interesting because it's not actually fully developed until like about your mid-20s. So when your kids are raging or having tantrums or all of that kind of stuff, like just remind yourself, like they don't have a, fully developed prefrontal cortex.
When your young adult child is still not making good decisions.
For sure. And so a lot of times I like to think of like when we are stressed, it's almost like our prefrontal cortex kind of almost goes offline. So if you think about if you've ever had a moment as a mom that you like didn't handle well, and maybe you lost your temper or whatever, a lot of times I'm just like, oh, your prefrontal cortex went offline. Like, so you're kind of reverting back to your emotional brain. So your emotional brain is called your limbic system. And this is, like I said, we feel all the emotions here. It also is like looking for all the potential threats. So if you think of somebody who is, let's say, very anxious, like they're like, this could happen and this could happen and this could happen, and they're spiraling, their limbic system is like turned way up. That dial is way up. And that's actually something that we have seen in people with depression and anxiety, is that they have an overactive limbic system. And oftentimes their prefrontal cortex is kind of dialed down. So what's been really cool is with adjustments are going to actually kind of dial up the prefrontal cortex. And when the prefrontal cortex dials up, it dampens the limbic system. So it helps kind of like bring that back into context and not feel like everything in your life feels like a threat. So just in general, like that's kind of what's happening from like a science perspective of how the adjustment is kind of impacting the brain.
How does that actually work? Because when you're adjusting the spine and then, the neck, and maybe you're doing a little bit of craniosacral therapy, but like how you're not touching the brain, you're not like adjust. So how does this all like ricochet back up and make brain changes on where things are pulling from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for a long time, even if you look back to like the start of chiropractic, like back in the late 1800s, when they were doing the first adjustments, they were seeing all of these amazing things that were happening. I feel like they didn't necessarily always understand why it was happening. So I would love to have a great answer of like, this is what's going up this tract and all of this kind of stuff. I think in general, when we're taking that stress off the nervous system, it's allowing that prefrontal cortex to function better.
Kind of lifts the fog
a
little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so interesting. What does a short-term stressor, like a kiddo having a tantrum or maybe having a close encounter with a car accident, but then, like you're fine and your adrenaline is raised up, versus long-term stress?
Yeah.
How is that different?
Stressors actually can be a good thing. It's interesting when we look at like a short-term stressor that actually like boosts the immune system, which is kind of interesting. Like just a quick short adrenaline burst when you have something, a mild stressor happen, that can be good for your system. And that's kind of how we're designed. Like we're designed, if we were all like living in a balanced nervous system, we'd hopefully be operating in a pretty balanced state. And then if a stressor presents itself, so we shift over to fight or flight, hopefully just temporarily, and then we shift back. And then if that comes back, like we're meant to kind of be able to shift back and forth and adapt. But it's more when we have this chronic stress that we're getting thrown in fight or flight all day, every day, which is pretty common for a lot of people if they have stressful jobs or too much time on their phones or all these different things. We have all these stressors trying to get your kids to all these activities. You're kind of always constantly priming that, and our system isn't designed for that. So then when you shift over to fight or flight, it's going to just kind of like lower your battery or lower your reserves. And eventually, if you kind of don't listen to your body and don't rest, eventually I like to think of like, that's when we end up getting sick. And it's almost like your body doing a force reset of like, okay, I asked you nicely to get more sleep. I asked you nicely to calm down. Now I'm going to force you to, and then we get illness.
That's where you've seen in the first episode, we talked about physical and emotional, right?
Yeah.
So this is where literally your body has, you've gotten to this point of emotion and like mental health status. And then all of a sudden your body's like, physically, I'm going to shut you down.
Yeah.
Like you're done.
Yeah, for sure. So like our body is going to do that because all of the adaptations our body does is like to keep us alive and help us survive and help with homeostasis. And so it isn't necessarily going to make the best decision long term. It's thinking like, right here, right now, what is the best thing for me to get me through this? So when you have that chronic stress all the time, I feel like a lot of times that can almost kind of dampen that prefrontal cortex and then increase the limbic system. And then your body, because you're in fight or flight, you're just looking for potential stressors all the time. Everything feels like a stressor. And that can just be a lot on the nervous system.
So getting back to the postpartum side of things, I feel like postpartum is a combination of constant low-level stress.
Yes, for sure.
But also tinges of high-level stress when the baby's crying and when this person's coming over and you're panicking because you're, you're feeling like your house should be clean, whatever. Yes. So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah,
almost.
For sure.
So the way that you explained it is adjustments are able to kind of help stabilize the brain and get that prefrontal cortex functioning properly. How often would you recommend getting adjusted, especially in this season of life, to keep that clear and keep your nervous system running smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, that can certainly depend on the person and how much stress that they're going through, as well as like what does their support system look like. I feel like there's not necessarily a one size fits all. I feel like ideally, especially when they're really in the thick of it, if they could get adjusted weekly, that would certainly be ideal. That's not necessarily what I would say for every single person, but it's a lot on our nervous system. And so we need to try to reduce that stress as much as possible. It also, I feel like the nice thing is like when I am touching base with women on a consistent basis, like I can kind of catch things, or we can discuss things and make referrals if needed. Or if they're just, if their baby is really struggling with latching and things like that, and do we need to like assess for a tongue tie or something like that, we can get them in touch with the right people. So that's where I feel like the Motherhood Alliance is amazing because, we have so many amazing practitioners in the area. So we can really help with that support, just being able to talk things out about going back to work and have somebody that relates. Obviously it's great to talk to your spouse about it, but also I just feel like men typically don't feel the same. Like they don't struggle maybe quite as much going back to work as the mom does. And so I feel like it's just so helpful we really try to just create this really supportive space in our office where women can really share. I feel like I've been so honored for women to share some really like raw, tough truths of how people are feeling. And they can share that in a space where there is like, there's zero judgment. Like I said, where you're navigating so much. And just, I feel like having that support is key. I know certainly studies that show that like when a man has longer paternity leave, that definitely lowers a woman's risk for postpartum depression and anxiety. So I think a lot of it is just creating that support and giving her space to feel everything and not feel like she's broken or something's wrong. Like this is a normal, transformation that she's going through.
So would you say like finding that support network is probably one of the number one things that you can do to help you in your mental state, especially postpartum?
I definitely think that is so important.
Yeah.
So, we definitely try to connect women in our office. We try to be a safe space where people can, talk, but, finding the right people that you can just really be, open and raw with. And, when you're having a bad day, not feel like you have to like sugarcoat it, and you can just be real and they're not going to judge you because, they've been there too. And I think that can definitely be a huge piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, you're not alone. That's the biggest thing for people to understand is that all your feelings, everything that you're going through, you are not alone. And there have been so many people that have gone through the exact same thing.
I think for a lot of people, we think about postpartum depression, anxiety as like being maybe the first 6 months or the first 9 months. It actually can be the first like 18 months to 2 years where people will have it. So I know that I personally really struggled when my like daughter weaned. She weaned like a little bit earlier than I was hoping. And it was incredibly challenging and really hard. And right around that time, my sister had my nephew. And so she was like nursing and it was just such a hard, challenging time. And so just also keep that in mind if like, it's not just like right after. That certainly can be a really common time, but those first couple of years after having a baby, it's a lot. So,
well, and I love that you said that because somebody could feel like they're doing okay mentally for the first 6 months, but then all of a sudden at 12 months or at 14 months, all of a sudden they start feeling this fogginess, right? And it's like, it can come later. It doesn't mean it shows up right away and it lasts through that season, but it can like come and go.
For sure.
There's a lot of changes with babies and situations and things that go on, during that time. So absolutely.
Definitely.
And that's why I love your office so much, is because it doesn't feel corporate-y. It feels homey. I feel like somebody can come in there, and just you saying that on here, being like, you can come and share your problems with me. Like, I am a non-judgmental zone. I am someone who is willing to listen. It's not like somebody has to come in and, get adjusted and leave. It's more of a family type feel, which is amazing.
Definitely.
Do you have any other tips for someone who is feeling like they're currently struggling with postpartum mental health? Obviously, getting adjusted is one thing. Having a good support system is another thing. Do you have any other steps that they could take that might help them on their journey?
Yeah, I think that, almost kind of circling back to our first episode is, I think sometimes it's like, okay, when we're experiencing anxiety and depression, it's kind of like, what is my body trying to tell me? And I think sometimes with depression, it's actually trying to get like your body kind of like calling you back home. Like sometimes you may have kind of like gone astray, and it's almost trying to like bring you back into your body. So I think trying to kind of maybe just, maybe it's doing something that you love to do as a kid, right? Like maybe you love to do art. So maybe you get like an adult coloring book and do that. Or, I find even with like anxiety, a lot of times it's just like getting out and moving your body, going for a walk, not just letting that energy like be pent up. A lot of times anxiety, you think of all this excess energy. That energy needs to move. And so it's not like those things are just going to be like simple, total quick fixes. But I think trying to find pieces of who you are, obviously when you become a mom, that kind of becomes your identity for a long time, but just trying to find like short little snippet things of like, if you just love to have like a cup of tea, like, can you have 5 minutes during your day? Or if you do make that connection with other people, like, if you're like a single parent or something like that, can you trade off with people where you can just try to find little pockets of time that are like just yours, that, so you don't just completely lose yourself.
I love that. The adult coloring book, or just something simple like that, or like get some clay and build something.
Yes.
That's what I love about with kids too, especially when they're a little bit like toddlers and stuff. You actually can play with that kind of stuff. But yeah, just
definitely
kind of thinking about the things that you love to do. And even if it's just little things, there is something beautiful about that. I love it. So we've obviously been talking a lot about like postpartum health. Something I know that Brittany and I are really passionate about is helping moms in that prenatal time frame, really thinking about how they can support themselves before they have their baby. What is something that you recommend, or something that you would say that to like your pregnant patients to help them prepare for that mental piece of postpartum?
I think part of it sometimes can just be like, it might sound silly, but almost just like lowering your expectations. Cause I feel like when you're pregnant, you're like, maybe your house is clean, you have all this stuff done, you have your routines, and like that's going to get disrupted more than you really understand until you're living it. So an analogy that I actually heard from a doula years ago is like, what is your one thing? So I think about like when I go, my family likes to camp, and when I camp, my feet are probably dirty. I'm probably like sweaty, and I might have some bug spray on me, right? Like I'm kind of gross, like you stink, but like, as long as I can brush my teeth, like I'm okay. Like I'm okay that I'm dirty. I can kind of like get through the, few days camping. Like I like camping, but it's just, it's not like my normal hygiene. As long as I can brush my teeth a couple times a day, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel so clean now. So it's kind of that same thing. So when I'm talking to women, especially in that third trimester, of like, I want you to think about your house and what is your one thing that you want clean? Like, do you want the laundry done? Is it that you want the bathrooms clean? Is it that you want your house vacuumed? Do you want the dishes done? Like what is your one thing? And if you have a spouse or partner or whatever, what is their one thing? And then you talk about it, because like maybe you don't care if the thing gets vacuumed, but like your mother-in-law comes over or your husband's vacuuming because they're like, oh, it needs to get done. And you're like, can you just do those dishes in the sink?
Right.
Like, can you just get that? So I feel like setting the groundwork of you each have your one thing. And then that almost can even be put on like the fridge, so that when people come over, like this is kind of that hierarchy of like, what we kind of want cleaned first, so that when people come over and like, what can I help with? There's almost kind of that list there.
Well, there's something powerful about when you think about just even something simple as house cleaning, right? For one thing, yeah, I say simple, but it makes a huge difference because when a room is cleaned off, it feels like your mental mind, like for me, it's clean too.
Definitely.
Like my one thing is my kitchen.
Yeah.
Like the countertops and the dishes, sometimes, it's fine. I'll let it go. But if I really want to feel like I can move on with my day or like I can have a clear head, if that area is cleaned up, everything else can be a little bit disorderly. That's
For
fine.
sure.
But that's the place, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like it seems like it's not something that's so super important when you're pregnant and you're about to have a baby, like, oh, we need to do the nursery, like all this other stuff, right? But it is really that communication ahead of time, writing it down, and then being communicative with your support team too.
Absolutely. So,
whether that's your parents or whoever, is coming over too that's huge. That's going to be such a huge thing for the long run.
Yeah. So I feel like that can be helpful. And even when you were talking about the feeling more anxious when your house isn't picked up, I remember hearing on another podcast, they were talking about like, why does clutter bother women more in general? And they were saying that your brain can only handle so much clutter. And for most women, it's in our brain, all of the mental clutter,
That's what
all
I'm
of the
talking
stuff.
about right there.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the reason we feel that need to like, all the clutter is because mentally our brains are so cluttered with all the things that we have to do.
And now I'm thinking a little deeper too, is like, what do you have control over?
Yeah.
You can have control over how you're cleaning the house, right?
Yes.
So you can organize something, you can clean this up and now it's clean. But in your head, maybe you can't do that as easily.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right? So you're doing like a physical activity to kind of clean something up.
Yes.
When your mental state isn't as it's cluttered.
For sure.
So maybe, I don't know, there's something really deep on that.
Yeah, is that why we go into a major like cleaning sprint or like spring cleaning type thing? It's just like, I can't handle everything, but this is one thing I can control.
Exactly.
That's what I think there's something deep about that for sure.
Well, I love this. This was great. This was a great episode. I find it very encouraging. I am done having kids, but I know multiple people that are pregnant right now or are trying to have kids. I'm definitely going to share this with them. I recommend that you listeners do as well. But I do want to circle into something that you've offered through your office. And I think it's been more of a pop-up. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But you do have like a mom's group once in a while that you hold. Yes. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So we do in evenings, mom groups occasionally. I've done presentations. I've had other people present. It's called the Para Collective, and it's all about trying to help kind of really encourage that parasympathetic nervous system that we have kind of talked a lot about today. Is, we're in that fight or flight all the time, and so much of us need to kind of be brought back home to our parasympathetic. So it's really about trying to like, all the topics have to do with like calming things or things that are going to bring safety to your nervous system, ways you can support that. It also, we always allow time for connection and people just to talk and connect, because I think that's also such an integral part of feeling calm and safe, is having your people. It's just been a really warm, amazing thing. So we do all sorts of amazing topics. We've talked about like the vagus nerve. We've talked about like pelvic floor health. We've talked about, I'm trying to think, like we've even had stuff on like, hey, adult coloring or just like planting. Like we've done all sorts of different topics that just kind of just feel like warm and fuzzy and good for our nervous system. So
would you have future ones on your website or on your social media, or where would someone find those?
Yes. So it would be on our social media. We share that on our Facebook and Instagram accounts. We'll always kind of share that. They are free and open to the public. So yeah, we'd love to have you join us.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us for these episodes, Dr. Kate.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.